So I wanted to do a video to help people identify what type of wheel horse tractor they have. So in order to do that, I'm going to show some of the documents I have and pictures of each model and what each model number means. Now I'm going to start with the early ones, and I'm going to stop at 1967 because that's when that particular numbering system ended and they went to a different naming system for their tractor models. So these early documents, which this one is a 1955, doesn't appear to refer to them with a model number. This is just called the wheel horse right-of-way. This one is a 1956, and it's also called the wheel horse right-of-way. Now it does say in the text here that they're available with a 2.5 horsepower or 3.5 horsepower engine, but there's no reference to the term RJ25 or RJ35, which would be the model numbers for these tractors. Now here's a price list for 1956. So here's where they show a reference to the model numbers. See the third one and the fourth one down there. The RJ25 was a tractor with a 2.5 horsepower engine, and the RJ35 had a 3.5 horsepower engine. So from 1955 through 1957, they maintained the RJ25 and the RJ35 as model numbers, representing the two different size engines. Starting in 1958, they changed. So I got this pretty nice service manual, and it says 1964 and before. This manual makes it easier to talk about all the different numbers because this should be a complete list. Now, I do know about the 754, which is something that Wheel Horse made, and it's not on this list because it was not an intended production model. So I won't cover that. In this group, the last digit always represented the year of manufacture of the tractor. So starting at the bottom with the Lawn Ranger models, the 32R and the 32E were made in 1962. One has a recoil start and one has an electric start. So the 33R and the 33E were made in 63, and the 34s were made in 64. In 1958, they made the RJ58, and that was short for Right-Away Junior. In 1959, they made the RJ59. 1960, they started the 3-digit numbering system, and the first 2 digits were the horsepower, and the last digit was the year. So the 400 was a 4.0 horsepower made in 1960, and the 550 was a 5.5 horsepower made in 1960. So the next year followed the same pattern. For the 1961 models, this is a 7.0 horsepower, 5.5 horsepower, and the 4.0 horsepower. In 1962, they had to do something different. They still had the 7 horsepower model, but the 5.5 horsepower model had an electric start or a recoil start. So they used a 0 to represent a recoil start with the 5.5 horsepower model. In 63, there was 5 different models. A 9 horsepower Kohler, that was actually a 9.6 horsepower electric start. And there was a 7 horsepower Kohler electric start, a 6 horsepower Lawson electric start, and here they had a 6 horsepower Kohler with a recoil start, and this is a 6 horsepower Lawson with a recoil start. So in 64, still following the same pattern, 10 horsepower electric start, 8 horsepower electric start, a 7 horsepower recoil start, a 6 horsepower Lawson with electric start, and a 6 horsepower Lawson with the recoil start. For 1965, I'm changing to this 1965 parts manual that covers all the models. So the first thing here is a 1054A. Now that's the same tractor that was made in 64, and I believe they didn't change that last number because down here they already make a 1055 that's different. The rest of the numbers end in a 5 for 1965. So there's a 10 horsepower, and here they changed things because they had a hydrostatic transmission. So the 7 represents the hydrostatic transmission, not the electric start. They had to do something different. So this is a 10 horsepower hydrostatic, and that's an 8 horsepower hydrostatic. This is a 10 horsepower 3-speed manual electric start, and an 8 horsepower 3-speed electric start. Now the 1045 is also special. It's a 10 horsepower tractor, but it has a different rear end on it. The toolbox and fender assembly is from a 1964. So in this case, that 4 would have to be representing a special model. It had the 10 horsepower engine with electric start. It just had a different toolbox and fender assembly. Okay, and down here is the 6 horsepower Lawson with recoil start and the 6 horsepower Lawson with electric start. And this is the Lawn Ranger models for 65, the 105 being the recoil start and the 155 being the electric start. So for 1966, I'm changing to this document that I borrowed off my buddy Hammerhead, and it has all the models listed for that year. So first you have a 1276 with a 12 horsepower Kohler engine, a hydrostatic transmission. Then you have a model 1076, which is a 10 horsepower Kohler with a hydrostatic transmission. Here we have a model 876, which is the 8 horsepower Kohler engine with the hydrostatic transmission. Here you have a 1056, which is the 10 horsepower Kohler engine with the 3-speed transmission. Now here's a model 856, which was the 8 horsepower Kohler with the 3-speed transmission. And here you have a 656, which is a 6 horsepower Tecumseh engine with a 3-speed transmission. And here you have the model 606, which was the 6 horsepower Tecumseh engine with a recoil start and a 3-speed transmission. Then you have the Lawn Ranger models. This is a model 156, which is a 6 horsepower Tecumseh with electric start. And here you have model 106, which is a 6 horsepower Tecumseh engine with a recoil start. Also, you have the model 1054, which is still being produced in 1966, and that's the 10 horsepower Kohler engine with a 3-speed transmission. Now for 1967, I have this advertising pamphlet, which is a fold-out. It also shows all the implements on the back side. So there's the model 1277, which is the 12 horsepower Kohler hydrostatic drive. The model 1257, which is a 12 horsepower Kohler with a 3-speed transmission. Here's a 1077, which is the 10 horsepower Kohler with the hydrostatic transmission. There's the 1057, which is the 10 horsepower Kohler with the 3-speed transmission. There's model 877, which is the 8 horsepower Kohler with a hydrostatic transmission. There's a 857, which is the 8 horsepower Kohler with a 3-speed transmission. There's the model 657, which is a 6 horsepower Tecumseh with a 3-speed transmission. The model 607, which is a 6 horsepower Tecumseh with a recoil start. And the Lawn Ranger's model L157 with the 6 horsepower Tecumseh engine and electric start. And the L107, which was a 6 horsepower Tecumseh with a recoil start. Now, one thing I noticed missing from this lineup here is in 1967 they also made a 6-speed transmission. So here's the owner's manuals for the 6-speed tractors. With the 8 horsepower Kohler was a model 867. And then you had the 1067 with the 10 horsepower Kohler, and the 1267 with the 12 horsepower Kohler. Alright, that's it.